We're recording and live.
I welcome everyone. In just a few moments, we will start this meeting of the Newburyport Historical Commission. I'm just going to allow a couple of seconds for participants and attendees to all get on board, so to speak. Let's see, we have one attendee. The Custom House is an attendee. That's good. All right, well, let me officially start. Pardon me. Welcome to this meeting of the Newburyport Historical Commission for the 8th of September 2022. And please be aware that this virtual proceeding, like all such meetings, is being recorded. We'll start with a quick roll call of our commissioners. I usually do this in alphabetical order. So we have Mr. Biff Baus.
I'm here.
Thank you, Biff. Malcolm Conrath, I believe, is absent. I did not see him. I'm going to put him in the absent category. 1 second. Mark Syndrome.
Present.
Okay. Joe Morgan.
Here.
Okay. Christopher Fay is also absent. He let us know that he could not attend tonight. Make a quick note here. And the chair, Glenn Richards, is also here. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed something.
And Andrew.
Andrew.
Yep.
Sorry about that, Andrew.
That's okay.
Andrew Bernhardt. Sorry about that. Okay, good. That's everyone accounted for. So the I don't expect any public, well, let me think about that. There may or may not be a public comment period. So for the sake of time, I'll review those rules if there should be a public comment period. So we'll get right into this tonight's agenda for the sake of time. Hopefully we can keep the meeting relatively short. There was one demolition delay application for 26 Eagle Street, and the applicant has revised their plans to the extent that further review by the Jennifer Blanchet, the zoning coordinator or zoning administrator, has determined that they do not even need a review by the Historical Commission. So their attorney has submitted a letter asking that they be allowed to withdraw their application without prejudice. So if someone would be so kind as to move that that motion be withdrawn without prejudice, we can vote on that.
So move.
Okay, that sounds like Mark Syndrome. Is there a second?
Seconded. And Joe.
Okay. Okay, sound like it might have been 2 seconds there, but that's okay. And I'm going to, I'll talk more about my research into Robert's rules a little bit later on, but one of the things that was mentioned is that after a motion is made and seconded, the moderator or chair repeats the motion, which I haven't necessarily been doing, but I think that's a good idea. And I'm also going to continue the practice I started doing recently of after the vote is complete, kind of restating how that vote turned out and why. So anyway, the motion that's on the floor is to accept the withdrawal of the application for 26 Eagle Street without prejudice. So going around for the roll call vote, which we need to do because it's a Zoom meeting. Andrew?
Yes.
Okay. Biff Baus?
Yes.
Thank you. Mark Syndrome?
Yes.
Okay. Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Okay. And the chair, and interestingly, according to Roberts, the chair doesn't even have to vote, especially in this case, but the chair also votes yes. In these, well, again, I'll talk more about that later. So that's a unanimous affirmative vote, and that motion is passed, and that application is withdrawn. The other order of general business concerns the Customs House, and just to keep me honest here, Caitlin, am I missing anything in the is there anything anything else other than the Custom House signage? Because I know there was that correspondence from that's been talked about, Forester Street. I didn't see that on the agenda, and so forth. So is the only other major item on the Custom House signage? Is that correct?
That's correct. This is
Okay.
the only other item on your agenda other than the chair and planning director updates.
Okay, so very briefly to introduce this, I believe we do have someone to speak from the Custom House, and I see they have their hand up. So they will be speaking in just a moment, just so that everyone on the board understands what this is about. The Custom House Maritime Museum, formerly the U.S. Customs House, is under a preservation restriction. So there are a lot of restrictions on the structure inside and out, by the way. This one even has some restrictions on the interior, which is a little unusual. Anyway, pursuant to that, when they make changes to the appearance, it needs to be reviewed. And we're being asked to determine that the change or the slight modification they wish to make will not have an adverse impact on the historical value or character of the structure. So who do we have speaking on behalf of the Custom House?
Christopher Silva, Executive Director of the Custom House Maritime Museum.
Okay, hi, greetings, Christopher. Thank you for coming tonight. Why don't you, well, is this your presentation that we're looking at here?
It is.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and explain to us what this is all about? Thanks.
So this is an existing building prior to the buoys being put in 1979. As you can see, there is an existing plaque on the building that was put there by the commission in 1975, naming the people within the community and historical preservation that were on the board that renovated the building. The location of the plaque is about 6 feet up.
Actually,
And-
sorry to interrupt you, Chris. Looks like the picture we're looking at now still has the NRA poster on it.
That's still it. So that's old. That's 1975.
Right.
And so our new plaque will be going just below that NRA plaque.
Well, that NRA plaque isn't there anymore, right? It has a bronze plaque. That's
Bronze plaque, but that's the current location. You can't
I
see it. Buoy. The buoy's blocking it now.
Okay. Okay, actually,
There you go. So it'd be
right.
going right below that NRA committee plaque.
Mhm. Okay, sorry for the interruption. Go ahead.
And now you have kind of a rough look at how it would look and where it would be located.
Mhm.
Yeah, if I can join, this is Jack Santos. I'm also with Chris, and I'm the board chair at the Custom House.
Mhm.
Yeah, that first picture was more of the older site, and where that NRA sign was. We now have a plaque that commemorates all the organizations and people, the mayor, the Newburyport Maritime Society that helped renovate the building back in the 70s.
Mhm.
The slide with the Caitlin, if you go to the slide with the full sign, slide number 3, that is actually what the sign looks like that we're proposing to put on that part of the building just below the current bronze plaque. This one is about 24 inches wide by 16 inches tall. It's slightly smaller than the bronze plaque that's there. The bronze plaque that's there, if you go to the next slide, is situated in such a way that it's really pretty high, and most people don't even notice it, much less read it, because of where it is. And we're proposing that the sign that the Preservation Trust has donated to us. They've had someone who has donated the money to put together this new plaque, which highlights not only that it's a custom house, which is not clear on the current sign, but also that it's got a famous architect that is also not clearly stated on the first sign. So we want to make sure that we got those two pieces, the custom house and the architect, on the sign. It also reflects the kind of signage we have throughout the town from the Newburyport Preservation Trust. So we're we're so proud and happy that they've decided to donate that sign. And what we're suggesting, if we go to the next slide, is that it's just placed just below the current sign, which is at about eye level. And it is the most walked part of the building along Custom House Way. And I'm hoping that, once that sign's there and you see it and it clearly states, who the architect was, what the building was, what year, it was built, eyes will then get drawn to the top and people will actually read the sign on top. But what we're here tonight is just to ask, per the regulation, that the historical commission review this proposal of signage and rule that it really does not detract from the architectural and historical significance of the building. And you can
Okay.
see it. Yeah. And that's, I think, and that's about it. Chris, I don't know if I jumped in there, just wanted to make sure I got those points across. I don't know if you
Nope.
have anything you wanted to add.
Perfect. Spot on.
Okay, let me turn to my commissioners here to see, why don't I just go around to see what comments folks have, just kind of randomly here in the order that they're just showing up. Why don't I start with Mark Sandrone? Any comments?
No,
have-
no major comments, except for the fact that it looks like it's a little lopsided, but that may be the way that it's photographed or pasted in.
Yeah, I suspect it's an artifact of the way it was sort of photoshopped in. Would you, Chris, or I think the other person's name I forgot. Can you confirm that that's just?
Yeah, this is Jack Santos. I photoshopped it. You're absolutely right. I don't do this for a living.
Not a problem. Yeah, nothing gets by us, Jack. How about? Thank you, Mark. Was that it?
That's it.
Okay, Biff Bouse. How about you?
Yeah, I appreciate that the sign is reflects the other Preservation Trust signs around town, and then is using a material that's, I think, a little more appropriate for the building. So I think I do appreciate that, and I don't think it would detract at all from what I'm saying.
Thank you, Biff. Speaking of materials, it looks like it's bronze or brass or something, but I don't remember you hearing that mentioned. What is it actually made of?
It's a
Go ahead.
bronze, a black wash or a dark wash. So it will weather similar to the plaque above.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Like I said, it looks like that. Just want to confirm it. Okay. See, Andrew, any thoughts from
It's
you?
excellent. I'm fine with it.
Okay. Joe Morgan?
No comment. I think it's fine.
Okay, I think that's everyone, right? My only, I'll tell you, I just have one potential concern. I'm trying to think. If you put it, okay, the plaque, well, and that's if you're putting it there, I don't know how. I assume it's going to be bolted on somehow, right?
Yes.
So it would require, drilling some holes into the granite to do that.
No. We're actually going to be drilling right into the mortar joint. That's why we placed it where it is. So every other block up is a split joint.
I see
So
that.
we're gonna be drilling and spacing into the mortar, not into the granite. So we won't be actually changing the face of the building.
Oh, okay. So there'll just be either one or maybe two bolts that are vertically aligned with the mortar joint. I get it.
Two bolts with what they call medallions on top of it. So you won't.
Right.
Yeah, if you go to slide 3, it might show where the bolts are because we had it specially designed for that. There's one below the 8,
yes.
the other up at the middle of the top.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, and it's every piece of advice we've gotten has been put it in the mortar.
Okay. And there'll be some sort of little escutcheon or what, rosette or something to.
A rosette over every bolt head.
Right. Okay. Well, I didn't hear. Why don't we? Would one of my fellow commissioners care to submit a motion that the Newburyport Historical Commission does not find any adverse impact of the proposed sign and proposed placement of the sign?
Yeah, I move to approve the proposed design for the new plaque for the Custom House.
Okay.
I can second that.
Okay, hang on a second. Joe, I'm going to, thank you. That was Joe and Andrew.
And
I'm
Biff,
gonna,
actually.
I'm sorry?
It
It was
was
Biff.
Biff.
Oh, it was Biff. I'm sorry. Biff and
No
Andrew
worries.
sound a little similar. Okay, thank you, Biff. So, Joe, I'm going to make a slight modification with your permission in restating this, that the commission approves of the new plaque and its position and its proposed position. Is that okay?
Oh, absolutely, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the motion. And so we'll go through a quick roll call here. 1 second. Starting as usual with Andrew. Your
Yes,
vote. Okay.
yes,
Mr. Biff Baus.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Biff. Mark Sandrone.
Yes.
Okay, Joe Morgan.
Yes,
Okay, and the chair is agreeable as well. So that's a unanimous vote passing or approving that motion. And what I usually do in this case, Jack and Chris, is I'll, in my notes to the planning office of with the decisions and so forth of tonight's meeting, I will let them know that this has been approved, per the preservation restriction, all that. So, and I'll if I have, I think I had Jack. I think I have your email address. I can copy you on that separate, little note to that effect, so you have verification that you're not in violation of your preservation restriction and you're good to go, so to speak. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you to the board. Thank you.
You're welcome. On behalf of the board, you're welcome. Okay. Quick note on correspondence. Nothing else for us to cover tonight, other than I just want to mention that we're posting this letter. You'll see it posted for our next meeting from a couple of residents that are near the alley just off Pleasant Street that goes by the Battlegrounds coffee shop and all that. It's not clear to me what they exactly want us to do. Maybe support their initiative to try to do something about graffiti there. But anyway, we can talk about that at the next meeting. I only mentioned it tonight to tip you off to take a look for that. So before we get to the final business of the meeting, the minutes and all that, let me tell you what I discovered from this book. See if you can see that. Robert's Rules of Order, and complete with a commentary. Actually, it's interesting. This was in response to Mark Sandrone's point about sometimes posing a motion in the affirmative can be confusing if it's clear that just about everyone on the board feels that, let's say, a house is not historically preserved. It seems odd to have a motion that the house should be preserved, but then everyone vote no, type of thing. So in the actual rules, I couldn't find it where it explicitly said, but in the kind of exegesis or the explanation of the rules, it does specifically say, and I'll quote here, the motion should be worded in the affirmative whenever possible. So I thought that was interesting. However, I think you all know, if you've attended any of these meetings of these boards, planning board, ZBA, this board, even to some extent the city council, I think the city council is a bit more formal, but none of those volunteer boards strictly follow the Roberts rules. For example, you would have to, request the floor before even making a motion and all of that. We don't go through all that formality. I did find a couple things in there, though, that I think would be worth applying. One of them I mentioned up front at the beginning of the meeting, and that I'll continue to do, and that's after a motion has been made and seconded, the moderator or chair restates the motion. In fact, technically at that point, the motion is referred to as the question. And according to the official rules of order, any order of business is first introduced with some motion. The motion's made and seconded, it's stated as the question, and then there's the debate and discussion followed by the vote. This board and the other boards, as far as I know, and I see Andy's joined us, so maybe he can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure boards typically will well, like in our case, we'll introduce a particular topic, such as a demolition delay hearing or whatever. We'll have a deliberation and a discussion of it, and when we are at the point where we kind of feel that we understand where things stand, there'll be a motion and a vote on the motion, which that's the way we've been doing it all along. I think that's the way it was done before I was chair as well. Andy, if you're paying any any attention.
Yeah, no, I love Robert's rules, right?
Yeah. So
yeah, sorry, it's a great discussion. As you mentioned, the ZBA chair actually on a routine basis notes the Robert's rules and motions being made, in the affirmative, and then having votes after that. Obviously, there's even more of a desire with a board like a zoning board of appeals, traditionally thinking of it almost like a court. They tend to do it even more strictly to that. But as you pointed out, depending on the convenience of the discussion, you certainly could do it the opposite form of the motion. But I think the reason why, of course, Robert's rules is set up that way is to try to provide clarity to for everybody as to what's being voted. When you do something that sounds like a double negative, it might be confusing. So, meaning not approving and all that. So at any rate, as you pointed out, the board has some discretion there, but the general assumption is to, as long as it's clearly stated the motion, whatever that may be. And as you pointed out, Glenn, I agree that restating what the motion is or what the question is very helpful for everybody before they take their round of call votes.
Yes, and I started doing that tonight, and I'll continue to do that. I'll try to make the motion as clear as possible so everyone understands what the motion is and what the significance of a yay or nay vote is. And am I correct, Andy, that it's not unusual to have some deliberation and discussion followed by the actual motion and vote rather than make the motion and then have the deliberation?
Yeah, no, that's true. The planning board, for instance, will have a good amount of deliberation before they take a vote.
Okay.
Whereas by comparison, we sometimes will see the city council actually go slightly differently. They generally will have, just because they like to have the formal process outlined before they have deliberations, they will often have a motion that's put on the floor and then continue with deliberation about that particular motion. Mm-hmm. But I think from that's from the city council's perspective, I think that is probably generically, sort of makes sense from their view. But for the historical commission, I do think it may make more sense to have that deliberation first, like the planning board, mm-hmm. and then move into the formal motion of some type, just so that you have every member has the benefit before making a motion of input from other members.
Okay. All right, so that's what came of. Thank you, Andy. Appreciate that. I guess you can consider this sort of a hybrid thing. I'd like to see us try to be consistent, and unless it really is awkward, have the motions in the affirmative, and we'll see if with the clarifying restatement and so on, we avoid the potential confusion. I also think that it's going to help that we've got the revised flowchart and voting sequence that we have already discussed in prior meetings. That I think when we had that discussion, everyone seemed to be very much in favor of those changes, and think that was going to be a significant improvement. So we'll look for, I think we'll be good. So, Mark, I'm not sure if you're completely 100% happy, but I hope that at least provides some context.
I'm not going to make any comments.
Okay, that's perfectly. As you all know, within certain bounds, this, especially a meeting like tonight when our attendees are now 0, so we get slightly more casual than perhaps we will at other times. Okay, but anyway, let's move along with actual business, and we do have a couple more votes, and that is, the first of that is on the approval of the minutes. These would be the minutes of the 25th of August. So let's see here. Give me a second to line this up. So hopefully you had a chance to review those. I thought that Gretchen did a particularly good job when she summarized the discussion about the new flow chart, about the sequence of votes and what they all meant. It was a very good and very brief summary. So now let's see, who was not here for the 25th of August?
I was just here partially. So,
Okay, so Andrew, I will put you down as an abstention. Biff,
Right.
you were here, right? And
Yes.
Mark, were you here last
I was
meeting?
indeed here.
Okay, and Joe? I think you were here, right?
Yes, I was here. Yes.
Okay, and I was here, and I think Malcolm was sort of partly here, so I'll assume Malcolm will be, well, he's not here tonight anyway. Okay, so let's go around for the vote on this. So Andrew, I'll put you down as an
Abstain.
abstention. Yep. Biff Baus, did you have a chance to review the minutes and are okay with them?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and so
Um,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Hang on. There was no motion made. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the 25th of August?
I can make that
Yes, so
motion.
moved.
Okay. I think Biff said I can make that motion, right?
I did.
And then Mark said so moved. So Mark, I'll put you down as a second. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. Okay. Now, Biff, your vote on that.
Yes.
Okay. Mark.
Yes.
Okay. Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Yes, and the chair is yes. They were very well done. So the only other order of business is if anyone wants to go home, so to speak, a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Chairman, this is Caitlin. I believe that we had the updates from the chair, planning director. I believe that Director Port had an update.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, then we will not adjourn just yet. Go ahead, Andy. What did you have for us?
Yeah, if I could, real quick, thanks, Caitlin, for the reminder. Just a reminder or an update. I know that the commission last looked at the Market Landing Park Visitor Center building and provided an advisory opinion to the planning board. I just pulled up the city's website here. The planning board is taking up the building review. They have a site plan review for the park project. That's relatively straightforward. But the building itself, obviously, there was some discussion about how that looks architecturally and how it fits in the downtown. So there was some concern expressed by the Historical Commission and informally as well by the planning board prior to the formal filing. So the architects have done a little bit more work. What I wanted to do is just point you to where you can see the more recent renderings we've gotten from Sasaki. And also what I think is an important memo for you to review in context, and it's one that's been given to the planning board. So just to let you know where that stands, if you want to look at it. And the framework for this, by the way, the context for this is under the ordinance, just like anything else, and we saw this with the IFS project, the ordinance requires the Historical Commission or gives an opportunity anyway, for the Historical Commission to provide an advisory opinion to the planning board for the downtown, for instance, and you have the same thing for the DCOD with the ZBA. Here, you've already given an advisory opinion, and just to be clear, the ordinance does not technically require any circling back to the Historical Commission, although we tend to think as a general best practice that it makes sense to kind of circle back wherever possible and still provide feedback to the board. So where the applicant, in this case, the city, has come back to the board and will be presenting the initial filing and then updated renderings to kind of see where that's come. You may want to chime in on that or weigh in on that either as individual or as a commission, but they will be taking that up on the 21st. So I'm just showing you where you can find those materials and where that meeting is. They will be taking this, that's one day prior to your next meeting. They'll be taking up the hearing for the building. And this is just the link, of course, to that page, as you see on the city calendar, just like your meetings. Underneath the agenda, just like yours, we have posted various different documents. Here, what we have is the site plan review, SPR, as well as the PB, Planning Board Special Permit, SP. Those are the file numbers. Those are just, again, links to our online applications. You might be familiar with our OpenGov page where you find all that stuff. And so, again, just helping you to navigate in case you want to see it. Underneath the files there for this particular permit that's on that agenda. If we scroll down, we can see there the elevations and related architectural drawings. That has been updated. So there's a original version back in June, and then there's the updated version that was uploaded today. That was given to us by the architects on August 26th. One thing that, if you want to take a look at that, you can take through the renderings yourself. I'm happy to go further if you want. But the one other thing that I would draw your attention to in relation to that is there is a memo It's actually shown here as a memo with the title of continuance. But within that memo is, and I just wanted to point to this, some important documentation relative to city council direction on the design of the building to date. And the reason I point that to you, and I've already done it to the planning board here as part of a memo to them, is there are some design constraints that are somewhat, impeded by or are limited by the design direction we've already received by the city council that has jurisdiction in large part because of the land that's under the city council's jurisdiction right now with the mayor and the appropriation of funds that they have towards this project. There are also, there is one other ordinance that comes into play, and that's the city's net zero ordinance. So there are some, the important point I'm trying to make here is as you look at those renderings, whether or not you weigh in or the planning board, where they go at that discussion on the design, there are some design elements or aspects of this that are somewhat limited right now. So if there is a desire to change that, and again, this is determined by the planning board with advisory from the historical commission, that may require some further revisit by the city council. And so it's not necessarily something the planning board can assign unilaterally during permitting because there is also the role of the city council. So I just wanted to make it clear here what those limiting factors are, and because they do have some relationship to what the board or historical commission may think is a better design of the building, meaning roof line, dimensions of the building, things like that.
Yeah. There's what we could, there's the wonderful building we can imagine, and then there's the reality, right, Andy? Does the city or the planning board expect the commission to issue a new advisory report, Andy?
They have not yet indicated. We do know, I think as some of the members here know, we do know in the case of the Institution for Savings, which was of course, understandably, was much more controversial, I would think, than Market Landing Park.
I think so.
Most people tend to agree that Market Landing Park, it's sort of more like a finally let's do it kind of thing, as opposed to, controversy, let's say. But because there was some concern about the compatibility of the design, I just wanted to draw your attention again to that context coming in here, which is the same context the planning board members have. While they do have the review of new structures in the downtown, and we're not likely going to have a whole lot of those, but because this is a new structure, even though it's relatively small in size, it's a park amenity essentially, and it is replacing the, again, I would encourage you to take a look at the trailer structures that are there today, because it's planned to replace that, when the funding comes in. It's not a significant size of a structure, but there's some, one can look at the secretary's guidelines and one might read that as being somewhat subjective depending on the person who's looking at the guidelines and how they're being applied in a given instance. So we might have, for instance, amongst commission members or planning board members, 9 planning board members, varied opinions about what is exactly compatible or appropriate in the downtown. What might be, neutral, what might be considered truly distinguishing it as a new feature versus trying to make it compatible and look like the old. Varied parties might interpret those guidelines on a given instance slightly differently. So it may not be possible, quite frankly, to satisfy everybody with exactly every element of that. But we are trying to do that to the best of our ability. Sasaki, the design team, is trying to do that. But they are somewhat limited by what the options are that they have available. So that memo summarizes a little bit of where the council came from and what the plans are going in there. They've tried to make some changes that are shown there, and we'll see where the planning board comes out. They may ask for the historical commission to provide some feedback, as they did with the IFS. I just clarify that it isn't obligatory, and it isn't necessarily obligated that the city or the IFS, for instance, come back to the historical commission. I think it makes sense, just a better practice to try to do that sort of thing and try to coordinate between all the relevant bodies. So, if you have any feedback, whether it's the day after or whatever, they may continue that hearing to further review the architecture. But I just wanted to draw it to your attention because it's in between meetings. The materials are now there, and we don't know what other supplemental information we get. It'll be posted there as well. But right now we have some slight variation. They've tried to make the structure look a little bit more like the Harbor Master building, given some of the design constraints they have about the structure.
Okay, thanks, Andy. And that memo is sort of helpful to know that, as to some of the background or context behind why, or just the context around how the building ended up the way it does, and what some of the design constraints were that were kind of imposed on the architectural firm.
Right.
Just one quick question that you might not know the answer to this. Did the city council indicate why they preferred wood versus brick on the cladding?
I mean, I'd have to defer to them. My understanding was that there was more reference to having something that was, say, subordinate and really
see.
more recognized as a park feature. And the idea, I
Uh-huh.
think, was that it might be perceived more like an ancillary structure if it wasn't the same brick.
Mm,
It would also perhaps not, try to imitate something that's there.
right.
So we kept hearing more references to making it look like the Harbor Master Building or doing something a little bit more, subordinate in scale or treatment or whatever. And so I wouldn't necessarily point to the Cashman Park restroom facility that was put in by the toll folks. It's a relatively small structure. It's not really, notable in any way. It's just kind of a basic feature. But that's a park building for public restrooms, and it's a relatively benign, small structure. This one has a little bit more prominent location, of course. But we've tried to put glass windows facing the street. We've tried to hide, the solar panels on the roof. And, we have debate about what folks like or don't like. But given some of the design constraints as outlined in that memo, they're trying to accomplish as best they can. For instance, we're screening on the site with landscaping the restroom doors because none of us really like the idea, I think, visually of having a row of restroom doors. But that is a design constraint that ultimately came out of the determinations of the council. So we have to try to abide by that, where we are. And we don't know how likely the council is to want to revisit some of the decisions they made over a period of several years or months. So that being the case, what we've tried to do to mitigate that, irrespective of the final treatment of the exterior of the building, be it shingle or wood clapboard siding or whatever, is to have landscape screening regardless. So the site plan that the board is looking at would impose landscape screening around that row, so that the pedestrian, unless they're actually standing there waiting for the restroom right in front of the door, they're not going to really have to worry about seeing that visually.
Okay, well, thanks, Andy, and my apologies for Caitlin did mention that you had this update, and it totally.
No worries. We just, and again, it wasn't something we knew about necessarily in terms of time frame for the agenda, but we did want to note it just to kind of keep you up to speed, given the planning board's meeting in between now and your next meeting.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. So, but I am glad that Andy brought this up, and I would encourage those of you who, I know there was some fairly significant opinions on this board about that design. So you're certainly welcome to make the planning board aware of their thoughts and opinions on that through either public comment or submitted written comments, or however you might like to do it. Okay. Is it okay to adjourn now?
So move.
Who said that? I think it was Mark.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seconded, Joe.
And Joe seconded. Okay. Any deliberation on that?
Please no.
Okay, so I guess not. Okay, so give me 1 second here. And we'll do a quick roll call. And starting with Mr. Bernhardt, your vote on adjournment.
Yes.
Okay, not very controversial, I guess. Biff
No.
Baus?
Oh, yes, sure.
Okay, oops. I had my finger on that. And Mark Syndrome?
Yes.
Okay, Joe Morgan?
Yes.
And the chair is in agreement. So that brings this Newburyport Historical Commission meeting to an end. Thank you once again, as always, for your attendance and attention and your dedication of your precious personal time for these meetings. It is very much appreciated. And I bid you good night.
Thank you, Chair.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.